The goods and service tax, better known as GST, ushered in an era of greater cooperative federalism. In the 5 years gone by, GST has been a mixed bag for both the government and the industry. To deliberate on this and other issues, PwC and CNBC-TV18 hosted GST 5.0, the unfinished agenda. Sanjeev Krishnan, Chairman PwC India, started the proceedings with a special address as the GST regime enters its 6th year.
Well, we waited 5 years. We went back again in 2011-12, just before we actually went down quite a bit. I mean, I don't want to talk about 13-14. Some of the folks asked us back again, what happened to GST? It's not changed anything. We said, no, it's coming, it's there, something is happening, blah, blah, blah. We went back again in 2015-16 after the change in the government. And some of the folks still asked us. Not many, but few. We said, yeah, it's coming. 2017 it happened. 2017, ladies and gentlemen, you'll remember there were multiple things that happened. The GST came along, and just a few months later, the insolvency code came along. And these two, to my mind, were very significant pieces of legislation, which both came together almost at the same time. And I think, well, I mean, while the jury is out on how successful GST has been, and now also insolvency code has been, it came out June 2017, so it, in some ways it is also celebrating 5 years. But we are celebrating GST at 5, not IBC at 5, and that I think will tell you the difference. So that's the first one that I wanted to say. I think few of the things have already been said earlier. I think no question about how the GST has really changed. Let's just say, what was the cost cascade of indirect taxes before GST came along? Anywhere between 25 to 30%. Even at our maximum tax rate, what does it translate into? I think that actually tells us a picture. So whether it has impacted price points in a way that we were used to, I think that's one of the biggest impacts that GST has made. And then you look at how it has impacted supply chains. I think all of us here will agree that today, when we are looking at supply chains, because today, whether we are a tax person, whether we are a strategy person, whether we are a business person, we are not looking at any of these decisions being based on what is the tax regime in a particular state. We are really focusing on what is good for my business. So friends, as I close, and I won't take much time because there are more learned people who are going to be on stage very shortly, I would just say that I think it's, to me, GST, both as a user as well as somebody who's been part of the ecosystem, has been revolutionary, nothing short of that. And I think there is much to do. As we said, it covers only half the economy, and we need to be able to unleash the benefits of GST by leveraging on the data that we have collected. Thank you so much, and have a great evening.
The event also had industry captains converge for a power-packed discussion to voice some of the concerns of India Inc., as well as make constructive suggestions to the government, policymakers, and GST Council for accomplishing ease of doing business in India.
Much has been talked about the accomplishment of GST and what are the areas of improvement. Sanjeev did allude to supply chain efficiencies, logistics, and so on. What we'll do in this session is to talk about what next for GST. What are the 5 big ideas for GST for maybe next 5 years as we complete 5 years now? And therefore, straight away going to the topic, and sir, if I come to you first, government is at a very good space right now, right, on GST. 1.4 lakh crore on average collections. I heard that FM said today that it has become a new baseline, right? I mean, last year it was 1.67 April numbers. It's mind-boggling in many ways, right? 89 crore GST returns have been filed. More than 1.4 billion e-invoices being generated. I think some of these numbers, when we speak to our overseas counterparts, they are not able to really believe, right? So much has been accomplished, and the government finds itself in a very good position right now, shall I say. Compliances have been, are stabilizing. More or less, GST has been settled in. Of course, there are teething issues as well. But sir, what is the government's perspective now? As we complete 5 years, what do you think are next 2-3 big things that government is looking at?
The GST journey so far in the past 5 years has been one of a journey where we have consolidated some of the important key objectives of the GST in terms of achieving a common market, uniform laws, common tax rates, exemptions, thresholds, procedures, and above all, I think providing the taxpayer a single experience in terms of meeting with tax administrations in meeting their obligations. Going forward, I think we'll continue with that agenda of simplifying the processes to make the compliances even more easy, and also ensure that in the last 5 years, we have been going soft in terms of scrutiny, audit, and verifications. I think since GST is a self-assessed tax, we would like to seek an assurance in fair means that the taxpayers have correctly met with their tax obligations and also made the correct filings. I think that would bring into focus, building enough capacity in the tax administration in terms of the skill sets required for doing the scrutiny and audit. We would look upon that. So what I touched in the first part was continue with the simplification process, what we have been doing so far, and clarify wherever it's possible, wherever disputes had come up. The GST Council has been very proactive in looking into those conflicting rulings, or for that matter, the gray areas in terms of interpretation, and come out with clarifications and circulars. I think we'll continue with the process. But at the same time, we need to focus upon improving the compliance by looking into the tax scrutiny and also the audits. I think internally we will put across to ourselves that we build capacity and see that these processes are carried out in the most professional manner. Thank you.
Sir, on the simplification of law that you mentioned, I think it will be music to the ears of industry, really. In 2018, there was a law review committee which was set up. The report came. Some of those items have been actioned. Many of them have not been actioned as yet. Do you intend to set up a committee to look at the law and what kind of simplifications we should look at, particularly in the provisions of input tax credits and so on, and even tax administration, right? You did mention that. The feedback that we have got is that every large company, they're getting notices in different states. There are special audit notices which are coming. Different states have different ways in which tax administration is being managed, what kind of information should be asked for, and so on. So when we talk about simplification, sir, is there anything specific that government has in mind as we progress for next, let's say, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months?
Well, I think insofar as issues relating to the law, the rules, and the procedures, I think the issues brought up before the GST councils are deliberated in detail and decisions are taken. I think you mentioned about the law review committee which had submitted its report way back in 2018. Some of those recommendations of the law review committee over a period of time were introduced through adequate and appropriate amendments or in terms of clarifications. But some of those suggestions of the LRC were found to be not possible to be implemented. For example, one of the issues which came up for with regard to issue of registration for group identities across the country. Given the subnational taxation, what we need to keep in mind in GST, I think providing a single identity to your business across all the states looks a little difficult at this point of time. Yes, we did appreciate the difficulties. Some of the service tax registrants had the comfort of having a centralized registration in the pre-GST era vis-a-vis the post-GST era. But those are the issues which we addressed in a manner that it didn't lead to disruption. For example, if you're looking at related party transactions, I think the government came up with a clarification that the transaction value will be what the declared value, and to ensure that there is no issues and disputes on that. We look at the changes in the law as and when the issues had come up or the demands raised. I think the law committee has been deliberating on several points. A case in point, I would like to say in the month of September when we issued a circular on the intermediary services, which used to be a burning issue on the industry. Now, the current issue with regard to the head office, branch office, expenses cross-charged, and whether the IST route should be made mandatory or optional, these are in the continuous discussion in the law committee, and also the deliberations are happening. One thing we need to keep in mind, Prateek, in GST is that it is no more the prerogative of the central government to decide and come to a conclusion. GST has been truly participative, collaborative, and consultative. And unless we arrive at a consensus, I think arriving at a decision is going to be a challenge. But I must also state, I think the way in which the GST Council has played a proactive role in addressing the concerns through a consensus approach has been fairly successful.
Absolutely, sir, and we all agree with that. The way GST Council has really functioned over the last 5 years, it is commendable. Let me just come to you. And talking about GST, and we talked about some of the data that we have, the wealth of data that you have. I have two questions, sir. One is, in the last GST Council meeting, there was a group of ministers' recommendation on compliances, and there was discussion about artificial intelligence, machine learning, tightening of the registration process, and so on. So just wanted to ask that as to what does it mean for the taxpayers, what are the plans that GSTN has? And the second question is on the wealth of data that you have. And a lot of us wonder that what are the potential of that data usage? I mean, can GSTN provide services to the taxpayers, look at the data, slice and dice in different manner and shape, and it will be a huge service to the taxpayers?
Okay, I will take the first question first. What GOM has done, on the face of it may appear like lot more compliance, but I perceive it slightly differently. What GOM is guiding GSTN to do is to use a lot of props for verification of actual existence of the business. So what it is saying is you could use the bank account validations by integrating with NPCI. You could do validations through electricity companies. You could do validations through geocoding of addresses, etc. What it does is remove the need for a physical visit of the officer to do the address verification. To that extent, while they may appear to be more verification and more compliance, the truth of the matter is all these validations lead to genuine businesses not getting visited by officers, and only where the risk is high and the system is able to identify, they are the only ones which are visited for verification by the officer. So the use of technology in terms of using artificial intelligence and other integrations from third-party data sources invariably will lead to benefit to the trades and bona fide trade getting facilitated. So that is how I view it. And the other side which they have said is that during the course of the life of the taxpayer, certain intelligence tools can be, trend analysis, etc. can be done, which is understandable from the perspective that you would have noticed across the media that GST does have a problem of fake credit flowing. So to the extent guardians of the revenue, that is GST Council, would be interested in knowing if AI and ML can be used to identify and block it at the earliest. Coming to the question of data, I will split the question in two parts as to can the data be analyzed and used for businesses. That's the technology part for which I am responsible. And for that I will say yes, it is feasible, but please understand that there are very clear provisions in GST law in relation to for what purpose the data can be used. And this was a section which was a kind of assurance to the states also, because for the first time you were creating a special purpose vehicle in which you were putting data from across the country. GSTN does put out a booklet of data on 1 year of GST, 2 year of GST, which gives you an overall feel of GST.
Ajay, let me come back to you. I mean, I come to you, and you represent a group which is into oil and gas, mining, manufacturing. I mean, the real Bharat, some would say, right? Just want to ask you quickly, what are your expectations from GST? What are the 1 or 2 big ideas that you think you would like to give to the people on the panel and otherwise on GST?
Well, first of all, I must thank sirs that they have done an incredible job in implementing GST in India. We have had a great success in implementing GST in Vedanta Group. Many of you know we are a conglomerate who does business in aluminium, copper, And by the way, we do oil and gas as well, which is sort of outside the purview of GST. So that's one area of concern. If we can address it, it's a policy issue, I do understand that, but it does bring a lot of cost inefficiency in running oil and gas business in India. Particularly if I look at globally as well, we haven't found too many examples where they kept the oil and gas business outside the purview of GST. So probably, I look forward to see if within next 6 to 12 months' time, if GST can be, extended to oil and gas business as well. The concern, by and large, I would say, I spoke to some of my industry friends as well. I see that ITC input tax credit continues to be a big challenge. We have seen initially the entire GST credit was available, thereafter it was come to 20%, where people have not filed their tax returns. It migrated to 10%, thereafter it was 5%, and now we have a situation where we are fully dependent on the vendors who are not being compliant. I do understand the challenges which administrations are facing, but look at it from a business like ours. We have paid the money, we are bound to take the credit, but unfortunately because of the intervention of the law, we are not able to take that. Incidentally, there are judicial precedents available which allows you to take the credit despite the fact that the vendor has not filed the return. So, I hope that this particular issue is addressed in a slightly manner which is conducive to do business. Perhaps that will go a long way in settling a large chunk of issue around working capital and cash allocation.
Pramod, let me come to you, and as someone representing the digital India, e-commerce, you must be very happy with what happened in the GST Council meeting last year, and you've also been talking a lot about the cash flow issues on GST, the fact that you have to pay reverse charge tax in cash and so on. So what are your one or two big ideas that you would like to give to the government?
Let me begin with expressing my sincere gratitude and thanks for the GST Council taking such a swift decision on one of the big asks from the e-commerce companies. So as one of the largest e-commerce companies in India, serving 300 million customers across 36 states, and selling those goods of several 100,000 sellers on our e-commerce platform, we could day in, day out feel the pain of thousands of small sellers who wanted to come on board our platform, but they had a lot of apprehensions and misgivings about going to the tax department. And I'm talking about the sellers like weavers, handicraft makers, the artists, who probably are part-timers or do not understand tax. And the minute you tell them that before you come and sell on my platform, please get a PAN number and please go and get the GST number. And that would require you to file a lot of GST returns. And that was a straight no. And we have been representing the government to give us the parity because this 40 lakh exemption was there for offline sellers also. So the only thing we were asking was give us parity. And let me be very honest about this. We have been advocating, we have been representing, and the outcome happened much faster than we would have thought. So this rebuilds our faith and confidence that yes, government is listening, and not just listening, but acting also very fast on that. And we are hopeful more and more sellers will be able to come on our platform in the days to come. Now, second thing, the second big challenge that we see with our sellers is that huge amounts of working capital or cash gets blocked. And it's no fault of theirs. It's their money which gets stuck in the system. And as the Honorable Finance Minister mentioned today that 1.4 lakh crores monthly collections has become like the base norm. And going back to the pre-GST times when the government was interacting with the industry, it was always said that we will look at more, lifting restrictions in GST credits and making more cash available once we know where we are heading in terms of revenue. Now, 1.4 lakh crore becoming the new norm. Maybe it's a time that we can, probably the government can look at taking some bold reforms, making some of those restrictions go away, and making more cash available. I'll just place 3 suggestions for the consideration by the government. And those are completely within the hands of the central government and probably the states. Even if there is a different view, they may not find it difficult. One is on CGST and IGST. Now, those CGST and IGST credits currently are being tracked at state level. Now, if we look at the law, the GST law, it doesn't provide that CGST, IGST credits have to be tracked on the state-wise level. But maybe a simple enablement through GST can help us to transfer those credits from one state to another and unblock a big chunk of the working capital. Now, we are not asking for SGST. We know the political considerations. We understand the challenges. But simple CGST and IGST, if that can be made fungible across states. Second piece, the import IGST. Now, all these levies, CGST, IGST, are union levies. They go to the union. Now, import IGST, if that can be allowed, and along with that, the domestic reverse charge mechanism also, if those could be allowed to be paid through accumulated input tax credit. So these are the two big things which probably should not have a huge impact in terms of going through a change in the law or going through huge deliberations and discussions. And third one, which could be more like innovative, and as the way GST has been implemented in India, probably one of the best and the biggest reforms, is can we look at tradable scrips? And tradable scrips where the input tax credit accumulated in the hands of large industries, if that can be allowed to be converted into tradable scrips, those could be traded from a company which needs capital and can be given away to a company which is paying GST in cash, and both the parties could negotiate a price, mutually agreed price. Now, clearly cognizant of the fact that it might, we do not know the unknown, that it might have big impact on the cash flows of the government, it could be done in phases, like just you can convert not more than 10% of your input tax credit every month, and it goes on. And once you feel more confident that there is no misuse of that, there is no evasion involved in the process, there is no fake scripts which are coming in the picture, and then probably it can be made into a much bigger reform. So these tradable scripts could be another big idea. And the last one on my plate is, as Sanjeev also mentioned, that billions of dollars have come into logistics and warehousing. If this restriction under 17.5 could be relooked at least for logistics and warehousing, hotels, and as worldwide statistics prove that maximum jobs get created in construction and tourism sector, if the restriction on input tax credit at least is removed for logistics, warehousing, hotels, factories, this will reduce the cost of construction by at least 8 to 10%. And that reduced cost will get passed on in the form of lower rentals and reducing the cost of doing business in India. Now, we have been all talking about ease of doing business in India. Maybe let's add one more thing to that, cost of doing business. And these are the credits, which can be straight away unlocked. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. And with this, we have run out of time, I'm told. So thank you very much. I'd just like to thank my fellow panelists. Thank you, all of you.